Hello, and welcome to Adweek Together. I'm Heidi Palermo. I'm the host of Adweek's Innovators Community and also the head of our Inside the Brand series, where we spotlight the achievements, the careers, the tips for success from our brand marketing community. And before we get started with today's show, I just wanted to mention that if you're finding this content valuable, you can always support our journalism with an Adweek Pro subscription. All you have to do is visit adweek.com/offer. Now on to today's show. I am very, very glad to be welcoming my guest today, who is Jennifer Halloran, and she is the head of marketing and brand for MassMutual. Jennifer, hi, and welcome to the show.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me here today.
Yeah, wonderful to have you from Boston. And I just wanted to start with, we have so much to cover and talk about in today's conversation, but I wanted to kind of just kick it off with just hearing how things were going for you and what you've been up to over the past couple months of what we know has been nothing short of interesting.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think we've been very busy, as most other of our peers and brands have been, really just working on adjusting to the new environment, figuring out how to make sure that we're communicating in the right places with the right messages with all of our customers, and really just keeping the work running in a really fluctuating market right now. We did have a number of messages in market when this all started, which we felt was important for us to do a quick pivot on. So we put out a message around stability, which we thought was important, especially being in financial services. So that was one of our first moves that we really moved quickly on with some great partners to help us get something out into the market very fast. And that really was just to sort of make sure people knew that we've been here before. We've been around for a really long time, and that we feel really confident that we'll all be able to make it through this. I think between that and a broad-based messaging environment, we also really hunkered down on a lot of internal comms, a lot of different constituents, a lot of different customers, and a lot of really important cross-channel messaging. So we became a real comms and sort of PR machine, a lot of community responsibility, which is in my world too. We started to work on a lot of that. And we also really focused on providing some type of relief and support for what's happening to the healthcare workers. So we took one of our programs that we have for National Community Responsibility, which is a free life insurance program. We modified it, revised it, and relaunched it into a handful of states, which we're still rolling out. So we launched our Health Bridge product, which basically is a free life insurance program for healthcare workers on the front line. So just a lot of product messaging, a lot of the same stuff I think a lot of people are struggling with right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what's interesting, not every brand has a natural product fit that is something that is timely and relevant in this time. And I think it's interesting to see you were able to find that connection in a very authentic way. But something that has come up with our brand marketing community that I wanted to ask you about is, in those first couple of weeks and months, it was all about, it felt more reactive, right? How do we respond to this? How do we kind of, get our ducks in a row? Now, as, the weeks have turned into months, how are you thinking ahead? And how is your team really thinking about breaking through what we've heard as the sea of sameness related to all the ads and the messaging that is out there? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I think we've all been following sort of these consumer sentiment trends and watching every morning where people are. I was on a conversation last week or the week before, similar to this, just, really spending a lot of time talking with peers and partners. And somebody categorized it as these phases of sort of relief. Was that sameness phase when I think there was a statistic of over 400 brands put something into market, letting people know that we were going to, sort of be there for them. And then we started to move into this sort of release stage of messaging where how do we kind of get out of that conversation about we're here for you and really move away from this unprecedented times terminology. And then when can we feel like we can move into this recovery stage, which is where people really just sort of say, I want to move on and I want to stop talking about this. I want things to sort of start to feel like we're going back to same. How do we move rapidly? Sorry, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. So I think that we've been moving into how do we really move rapidly through this changing messaging environment. I don't think in my marketing career I've ever seen it move so fast and be so unpredictable, because we really can't compare this environment to how consumers or brands responded to something very similar. So we've really been looking ahead at week to week, moving messaging, moving relevance, and moving media around. And I think the keys to that are really understanding the right mix between cadence, time, and tone. Like just really being smart. Don't invest where we don't think we're going to see any kind of real results. Be more efficient, because a lot of us are all being challenged right now also with the opportunities to give back budget and figure out how to make things work from an ROI and an enterprise level. And really looking at ourselves going forward as what's the right next thing to put into market and when is it. And I think that's a lot of the efforts that we've been doing. It's really shifted our entire strategy from how we usually plan on an annual basis in a really different direction for us.
And is there any place or source that you're finding has been helpful for your team to gather real-time insights, or like how are you gauging the sentiment? You talked about focusing a lot on the tone change. Just give me some insight into how you're navigating that with your team.
It's a great question. We have a lot of really good partners that we work with, and we rely on them for a lot of the research and data in general. I also manage our consumer insights and research team, so we have the ability of leveraging some of our already existing partners that are following things on a pulse basis. We have an existing research, sort of internal research council that we built of our existing customers who have agreed to help us with messaging and product launches and sort of always be on hand. So we've really been able to leverage them recently through this environment to test and check the pulse. And I think really a lot of what's been helpful to me are things, these kind of forums similar to what we're doing today, where we have an opportunity to join webinars, to join conversations, to follow things that are happening in the industry, that we can see what's sort of going on and stay abreast of it, along with all of the regular daily subscription services. I think that most of us tend to follow, and the industry pubs like you guys that really help us stay on top of things.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. We've been having many community Zoom calls, and while everybody might feel kind of like overwhelmed with the amount of virtual conversations, we have been getting such positive feedback that it's just a helpful way to connect and hear what others are doing and the challenges that they're facing. So I'm glad we can help be a resource for that. So you talked about your strategy, Jennifer, and how that's real. I mean, this is going to be a lasting impact. It's not just short-term pivot and then move on. What are some of those longer-term impacts that you're seeing coming out of COVID that you're going to be thinking about for marketing moving forward?
I think it's really, long-term, I think it's really going to be making sure that we know how to be flexible and really nimble. From a strategy perspective, we work as an enterprise team that supports multiple channels with multiple products and multiple messages. And I think for us to really be able to hone in on the value versus the volume is going to be something that's really critical for us to appreciate going forward. I think from best practices, we really need to sort of go back and figure out how to do the work well and do it really efficiently. And I think a lot of conversations are going on right now in the market around what's the future of travel, what's the future of how often do you visit teams? Do you have to be on site for a lot of different types of production related issues or messaging issues or strategy sessions? So I think we're really learning how going forward to pull together rapid decision teams without having to do, sort of these big lengthy discussions with, 22 weeks to 3 weeks of preparation and decks put around it. I think it's really going to be focusing on efficiency and being nimble and reactive. And I think that's really going to be important for us to go back to sort of the roots of how we learned how to do the work well and not sort of get sort of spun up in all of the sort of process and circumstance around how to get the work done.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We've been seeing a lot of the creativity coming out of the brands in recent days, and highlighting a lot of from brief to execution in 6 days or less, or it only took a week to get something out the door. And I think it's really shining a light on how brands are striving less for perfection and more for impact, which I think hopefully will be a lasting impact that we see coming out of this. And specific to work impacts for the looking a little bit ahead, what were there any major projects or things that you had in the works in the next 6 months to a year that with COVID it's kind of like threw you for a loop? I'd love to touch on that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we had a lot of things that were going to happen this year because we've tracked between the media and messaging perspective. We like to really track around cultural moments in places where we think we can show up with the right message that's relevant at the right time. So we had a lot planned this year around the Olympics, and we had a lot planned this year around the political environment that we expect to still happen to some degree, but definitely has been very much sidelined from consumer consideration and conversation lately. So we had a lot of big brand messaging that we were going to sort of position around those, one of those big moments, and the other around sort of the environment of we thought what was really happening from the pulse of consumers, and everything around that shifted significantly in February and March when this really started to shut down across the country. Obviously, consumers' focus and concerns and what they worried about or what they were really was important to them really began to shift. So we had the challenge of taking a campaign and market that's called Moment You Plan For, which is about really positive, happy life moments, and being prepared and ready for them. And that's completely different. We said, this is not a moment any of us had planned for. So how do we fix that message to be more relevant? We have the good fortune right now, I think, of finally being able to step in with a real solution product message, which we always try to balance. Sort of the equation between how much are we spending on brand, how much are we spending on just the customer, and how much are we really spending on product. We've always been very sensitive to present what we do from a financial services perspective and insurance perspective in a sensitive way without hard selling. And now I think it's really been able to give us a different way to step back and think about how we talk about that messaging around a moment you plan for. And, you know, I think a lot of us are talking right now, like, when do we go back in and talk about selling and product? And we are actually in the good fortune position right now of having something that's very relevant and very top of mind to people, which is their financial situation and their security, protecting their families. So we definitely shifted out of some of the bigger messages that we really were looking forward to. And we're just following things sort of week to week, day to day to figure out when does that all come back, and shifting that message strategy around, any of the media that we had obviously prepared. We build campaigns around the opportunity to distribute them. And as we've been challenged with, as everybody is being asked to now cut back on budgets and what can you give back in that degree, it's a really unique balance for us now to say this is the perfect message, but how much can we really put into this message? Because we know we've had to decrease media budgets. We've had to cut back on certain things. You know, where's the relevancy, and is it in the right channels? And really reevaluating a lot of those equations that we had some great plans and some great campaigns for this year, and it's just all being shifted week to week now for us.
Yeah, and part of that, I have a question for you in your position as leader of your team. How do you balance being really an empathetic leader at this time, knowing that there's a lot of uncertainty, both from consumer standpoint, but closer to home with your team? So when there are tough calls when it comes to budget, or anything related to change, how have you been managing through that?
That's a great question. We have we're very focused on a strong internal culture at MassMutual. I think it's really relevant to the brand, and the team and the company have really been doing a lot to keep each other together. Our CEO was one of the first ones who came out and just 2 weeks ago, he just said in an all-employee meeting, no one's going back to the office before Labor Day. They said, we can't really tell you when, but we know having this sort of looming thing of uncertainty over your head, like, when will we go back? What am I going to do with my kids? How am I going to go back to work or in the office? Any ways that we can break down and keep people sort of sane and feeling comfortable is really important across the organization. My team has works as a centralized function, which I'm sure a lot of other marketing groups do. And there's a lot of stress across all of our business partners right now. and really sort of staying together, being and getting as many opportunities to bring people together to share some of these conversations is important to us. I think the other piece of that has been to be sensitive to what's going on at home, but to realize with so many big things shifting right now and a lot of really hard decisions coming back to us around cutting budgets, figuring out what the back end of the year is going to look like. Do you still need these partners? Do you still need, so many numerous vendors? Do we still need such large teams to support things? It's really a strain. And I think the important thing is to be really transparent and clear with people and make sure that we listen more to the personal side of what's challenging people at work right now and try to take all of the emotion out of any of the decisions that we have to make. Mm-hmm. And I spend a lot of time telling my team, like, we are all going through this. Don't forget, anybody that you are having a difficult day with is going through the same things that you are, or even worse. And I think really kind of balancing some of that, step back and think about where you are and what we're all going through, with the fact that none of us are really going to be immune to having to make some difficult decisions right now. I think, there's always that theory that, a good crisis brings out the best in a lot of us. And at some point, the fact that we are leaders of all of our teams, we're in that position that we were put there because we're going to have to be the one that's going to make the decision. And I think what's most important is really maintaining the empathy on a day-to-day basis, deeper than we probably normally would have. Like, it's not just, are you having a bad day today? It's a whole different level of people having a bad day. And the inability to, walk them outside, get a coffee, or just sort of sit down next to them in a chair and listen is hard. And I think we really have to make sure that we keep that flow, but we be really honest and transparent that there are things that we're going to have to do here to make all of this better, at least in the short term. And those tough decisions are things that that's why we're in the roles that we're in, and as leaders, and that's what we've been asked to do. And being really clear with people to remind them this is what we're all working for. And it's not specific to just any one of us individually, but we all have to pitch in to make these decisions and take this direction that we've been asked to is really important. And I think the more we communicate and the more honest we are about how it's not easy, and none of us really want to be doing some of this work or decisions, but really be transparent about that is important right now.
Mm-hmm. Great leadership advice. Thank you. So there's transparency, honesty, open communication, empathy, lots of good takeaways there. Follow up to that, Jennifer, would be that was really from a leadership standpoint. And I love this notion of leadership coming out of everywhere right now, which I think is another important thing that has happened because of COVID. What are some of the skills and traits that you see being imperative to marketing moving forward?
I think we always would have argued around resiliency and endurance, and I think the most important things that we've always done well traditionally around marketing is that we can work well across teams. We do join people together. We have to make collective decisions to support people. So in general, we have to be collaborative, and I think that's really still going to be really, really important, especially now that we've managed through crisis, unknown circumstances, products coming off the table that we're supposed to be launching, customers that we don't know how to reach anymore, a lot of different type of decisions that we thought we could always put into a really preset, smart, calculated plan. A lot of us like to plan media maps and plan comm strategies and plan, very tactical, focused type of strategies and campaigns. We just have to learn how to be much more flexible with those type of things going forward. I think another thing that's really important to us is that we go back to learning how to be real practitioners. If you don't know a lot about how some of the depth or the breadth of digital and social and some of your other programs run, learn them. Great for having really strong teams to do this, but we're going to have to learn that and really take that roll your sleeves up, bottoms up kind of mentality, which I think is really important. And I think hiring people with that idea, it's not about hiring a bunch of consultants to help you figure out your strategy anymore. If you don't know and we can't figure it out, we don't have a 6 to 8 week time frame window anymore to figure out what the perfect strategy is or the perfect message. We have to be really smart, and we have to be able to go down to really nimble small teams to focus and get their work done. And then we'll get to a place where we get to build it all back up again. But I think right now we really, going forward, have to learn how to do a lot more with a lot less and be okay to roll with that. You know, I think some people get really set in the process and the calendar and the campaigns. And, you know, as long as we have the data and the backbone to still make really quick decisions, we're going to need to be doing that with a lot more skill. And I think we need to look at the things that we did, you know, 6 or 8 months ago and look at them differently. I mean, obviously there's brands out there like Ford that I think came up with something like 20 some ads in a weekend. Like, I know none of us want to be in that spot, but it can happen, you know, and we can do great work on the fly. And we had, you know, some great partners that helped us with that to get our work out in timeframes that we normally haven't done before. And I don't think that any of us really want that to be the norm, but the fact that we know we can do that, we have to be able to hire people that are comfortable with that and comfortable with knowing that it doesn't always have to be really, really big teams of 100 people with big presentations and meetings to get to the real answer on how to get things done.
Perfect. And Jennifer, we're coming up on time now, but I do want to leave with one final question for you. What is one thing that you are very optimistic about right now?
You know, I know we're all going to get through this, and we're going to get through this so much better than we were before. And I don't mean to be insensitive, because a lot of people, even on my team, we've lost things, we've lost friends, we're living in a really difficult emotional time. But every day when I get off a call with some people on my team and they're just like, this is killing us. And I say, well, write it down on a piece of paper, because I guarantee you there's 3 things that we did this week that we have never done with the same teams and the same people. But we did it better. And we figured out how to get it done in a new way. So don't create this as a loss that it was our COVID environment that we worked in, because I think realistically we are so much stronger and better for what we're doing right now that it's going to make it better. And I really do think we'll all come back just the way we were before. And especially because I think the strive for customers for consumers in general to just want things to go back to normal is important. And that's where we will be, and we can help them get there, definitely in what we do every day.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining me today, Jennifer. It was a pleasure to have you on. I wish you the best and look forward to seeing all the things that your team produces from here on out.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And for everybody watching, thank you again. And again, if you want to support our journalism, you always can. Go to adweek.com/offer. And we'll see you here again tomorrow for another episode of Adweek together. Thank you.